we are flying through this edition of the Elias Macko Show as we end off the week here on the program. Our next topic up for discussion, universal basic income, and whether it would make sense for Quebec. Would it actually add jobs? Would it boost our economy? Could it help the province end poverty? With more on this, we go to Floyd Marinescu, founder of Universal Basic Income Works. Floyd, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
You have crunched the numbers. You've looked at all this. You are trying to make the case that universal basic income would help Canada, would help Quebec. First things first, for our listeners, give us your definition of universal basic income.
There's a lot of different definitions for whether it's guaranteed minimum income, universal basic income, GBI, GBLI, GMI. The point is that all of these establish a floor that we can rely on, psychologically rely on, fiscally rely on, to make long-term plans to ensure everyone is above basic needs. And the model that is most commonly discussed in Canada is that which would resemble more of a guaranteed minimum income, which is a fiscal floor that reduces slowly as earned income grows, so that you get to keep part of the money when you work, and effectively eliminates more poverty, but as well as working poverty, because no one who works should be in poverty.
What's the floor? Give me the numbers that you think would make sense in our context.
Right. So the model that was attempted in Ontario, which has been the focus of a lot of debate among members of Parliament, would be, I believe, a $1,400 floor per individual, and I believe $1,700 or $1,800 for couples. This model was tried in Ontario. The Parliamentary Budget Office predicted it would reduce poverty by 50% across the country. And another model that was modeled in the reports by the Canadian Centre of Economics Analysis, which we'll be talking about shortly, modeled a $2,000 basic minimum income floor, and that would actually reduce poverty by nearly 100% across the country.
When there have been trials, when there have been tests of universal basic income, what ends up happening, Floyd?
What ends up happening is we see people, students staying in school longer. We see mothers caring for the children, being a little bit outside the labor force when they want to care for the children, but overall, statistically speaking, almost no reduction in work, except for those two examples. In fact, we see people in extreme poverty working even more because they now can afford the tools of their own emancipation to exit dire predicaments. We've seen this across the world. Over 105,000 people have been in over 50 basic income trials, over 17 trials in the last 50 years. There have been more than 17, but for this study I'm referring to, these 105,000 people kept working or worked more.
So when you refer to these studies, these trials, I've heard this before, and I've talked to other people before about universal basic income, and they say, Elias, this works. We have the studies, we've got the trials, this will work. So then I guess it leads me to the question, Floyd, what's the hang-up? If it works, why aren't we doing it?
I think it's just political will. Literally, it's also human bias. We still have this bias that people won't work. This bias has been in some ways tickled a bit by what's happened now with pandemic income supports, which have been mischaracterized. With CERB, we actually saw, statistically speaking, people who even got less than CERB went back to work on the whole. There were even stories of people who went to work for free because they wanted to help their boss. And there were studies of people on CERB who, when they couldn't work, were taking online courses to upgrade their skills. I think we have to get through a cultural bias around this, and at the end of the day, this is going to become urgent because automation is depressing wages. We are facing a pandemic of underemployment. Canada has the most educated population in the world, with the largest number of university educated people in poverty, and that is due to the excess labor that automation has already caused. We need basic income so we can actually upskill, have time to seek better jobs. And unfortunately, things may have to get worse before they get better, because things will get worse as self-driving cars, self-driving trucks come out. And I think we're going to find the political will pretty soon. I am very confident that I think we'll have a guaranteed basic income of some way or another within the next election cycle or two. We have to. What other option do we have?
We're with Floyd Marinescu. He's founder of Universal Basic Income Works. There's a new report out about how basic income could help Canada, could help Quebec. Now, Floyd, you referenced the pandemic and you referenced CERB. I know, hosting this show, I would hear from restaurant owners. I would hear from small business people saying, I can't get my employees back because of CERB. So, and I know that's anecdotal, right? That's not real evidence. That's anecdotal, I'm telling you right here. But do you feel that CERB hurt or helped your case for universal basic income?
I feel it helped the case because a lot of people who were employed never imagined that they would ever need support from society, support from government, suddenly needed it. And we realized the precarity by which a lot of people have been living their day-to-day lives. So I think we have a giant voting bloc, millions of people who now are more favorable to basic income, despite these anecdotal stories.
I'm on your website, ubiworks.ca. It is completely regionalized. So you make the case for different regions of Canada, whether it's BC, the Prairies, Ontario, Quebec, or Atlantic Canada. Let's turn our attention to Quebec, the Quebec perspective. What can you tell our listeners about what a basic income program could do for Quebec? Right.
So this report from the Canadian Centre of Economics Analysis looked at what happens through a couple of basic income schemes. What would happen by the net impact of this money flowing effectively in a trickle-up manner, helping the economy. So when people have money to spend, when they can participate fully in the economy above basic needs, they spend that money in their economy. That money stimulates more sales. It stimulates entrepreneurs to hire more, to invest more. This report quantifies those impacts in cold, hard numbers. It shows that basic income could add 128,000 new full-time equivalent jobs in Quebec in 5 years. It shows that nationally it could grow the economy by $80 billion a year. That's as much as our pre-COVID tourism and hospitality industries combined. Putting money into people's hands would add $27 billion a year to Quebec's businesses' profits and trigger $12 billion in new private capital investments, again, as business responds to growing demand in a trickle-up fashion.
So
it would grow wages.
I know it sounds counterintuitive, right? When you say, well, your basic income will create jobs, and for Quebec, you cite the 128,000 new jobs. Explain that for our listeners. How universal basic income actually increases jobs?
Right. So this report looks at one of the several ways it increases. This report looks purely at the impact of the financial flows. When people can participate in their economy, they spend more, and businesses need to hire to respond to that demand. It increases aggregate demand from an economics perspective that greases the wheels of the whole economy. People spend in the local store. That store hires more plumbers and construction workers. People spend more in their local communities, and trickles up throughout the economy in that way. This is fixing a demand gap in the economy as the velocity of money, that literally the number of times the dollar exchanges hands, has been slowing down in Western countries as wealth is accumulating to extreme levels, and basic income starts to turn that around. The report shows it would increase jobs in retail, manufacturing, and cultural industries. There's evidence from Alaska, where they have a form of basic income from oil revenues, that it supports seasonal work, such as in Quebec's rural communities like fishing and logging and trapping, because people will have more income security in the off-season to work other part-time jobs, and they'll be able to do those traditional forms of work. And long-term, it would stimulate jobs in emerging economies as people have time to invest in their own retraining. Entrepreneurs would have reduced their costs of capital, being able to spend more time building their businesses. As in fact, I was helped, and a number of business owners that I know were helped. I organized 100 CEOs in Canada to endorse basic income and ask Minister Doug Ford in Ontario not to cancel the pilot. A lot of these CEOs themselves had forms of income grants from various programs or from family members that let them start their businesses. So long term, it means we can retrain, and that is really important. As we had mentioned earlier, we're in this time of dramatic and fast technological change. People need time to reinvest, time to go back to school. To say that people can retrain on their own without the means to do so is a cruel joke. Basic income provides the means to do that.
Floyd, I love your passion and I love your arguments. I think you might be swaying a lot of listeners, and I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
Floyd Marinescu is founder of Universal Basic Income Works. They got a website, ubiworks.ca.